billionaire CEO Jeff Bezos is running for his life, arms and legs pumping as fast as they will go. Behind him, he can hear the mob advancing, closing in. He has to lose them, has to find a way to throw them off the trail. Up ahead, an opportunity presents itself, a narrow alleyway. He ducks down the alley, heart pounding in his chest, as he listens to the footsteps of his pursuers sprint past him. They're gone. He's safe. For now. He takes a moment to catch his breath, vision swimming from the panic and exhaustion, and suddenly catches a metallic glint out of the corner of his eye. Uh-oh. He's not as alone as he thought he was. He straightens and prepares to defend himself from the strange, wild-eyed man at the other side of the alley. The man who is slowly advancing toward him, holding a knife and a fork. When it comes to the lifestyles of the ultra-wealthy, many of us struggle to wrap our minds around what they might get up to during the day. Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos. What do these famous billionaires do with their time? Profiles of the industry giants paint a picture of early morning and green juice, of long meetings and business trips to exotic locales. For Jeff Bezos, that's a pretty accurate picture, or at least it used to be. On one fateful day, the Amazon CEO found his extraordinarily ordinary routine turned completely upside down. In a series of bizarre, terrifying events, the dream life of a tech billionaire became a nightmare. The day started like pretty much any other. Jeff climbed out of bed at 6:30 a.m., honoring his personal motto of early to bed, early to rise. This left him with the morning to himself so he could take his time settling into the day. He brewed a pot of coffee and read the newspaper for a while. When the kids woke up, he whipped up a batch of pancakes for them. Then, at 10 a.m., it was time to leave the kids with the nanny and head off to work. First, a meeting with the shareholders, then a lunch meeting with the head of a company he was considering purchasing. Then it was time to drop in on an Amazon fulfillment center for a surprise visit. After all, who doesn't love unexpectedly seeing their boss's boss's boss in the middle of a busy workday? When he arrived, Jeff greeted everyone and then took the operations manager aside for a one-on-one meeting. He wanted to check in about productivity and all the usual things. Were employees taking too many bathroom breaks? How quickly could they move packages? Just standard questions. But as he talked, he couldn't help but notice his employee's eyes glazing over a bit. He asked the man if he was feeling all right, but the manager assured Jeff that he was just hungry. It was almost his lunch break, and he was looking forward to the leftover meatloaf waiting for him. Well, Jeff wanted the man to be focused during their meeting, so he offered to go ahead and start the lunch break now. After all, the ideal lunch break is one that you're also working during. They sat down in the break room together, and Jeff could hear the man's stomach growling. He wasn't kidding about being hungry. But the cold meatloaf would surely sate his hunger and get the conversation back on track. The man picked at his meatloaf while Jeff continued speaking, delivering an inspirational speech on improving metrics and worker efficiency. As he became more passionate, as he often did when talking about efficiency, he began to gesticulate more dramatically. As he became lost in his own brilliant words and corporate wisdom, he didn't notice the operations manager abandoning the meatloaf entirely, staring instead at Jeff's hand, which was drifting closer and closer to his face. Jeff was just about to reach the conclusion of his point and send the employee on his merry way when the operations manager all of a sudden snatched Jeff's hand out of the air, pulled it in close, and bit down hard. Jeff yanked his hand from the other man's grasp, crying out in pain and shock. He'd had employees respond poorly to feedback before, but never like this. Usually they just cried or threatened to quit. No one had ever bitten him before. He demanded an explanation for this behavior, which was certainly not appropriate for the workplace. The operations manager blinked, brow furrowed in confusion. He couldn't articulate why he had done it, what had possessed him to grab the CEO's hand and attempt to chow down. He offered up the only explanation he could. He was hungry, and Jeff looked delicious. The words sent a chill down the billionaire's spine. He stood up and excused himself from the meeting. He left the fulfillment center and left work for the day. In fact, he left town altogether. This was all too much, and he needed a vacation. He called the nanny to let her know he wouldn't be coming home for a little while. No need for him to pack a bag. Anything he needed, he could purchase when he arrived at whatever luxury hotel he settled on. He called up his favorite pilot, told him to pick a destination with an exclusive, private resort, something with a spa so he could relax, and within the hour, he was sitting on his private jet, preparing for takeoff. When the jet reached cruising altitude, one of the usual flight attendants came to his seat, pouring him a glass of red wine, one of the nicer bottles on board, as she could tell he was having a difficult day. She also offered a variety of snacks. This was no commercial airline with its peanuts and pretzels. This was a luxury craft with luxury snacks. Crostini with French butter and freshly shaved truffles, a charcuterie board with the finest meats and cheeses, fresh fruit, and chilled oysters were all on the menu. Jeff treated himself to a little nibble or two, finished his wine, and kicked back for a nap. He awoke sometime later, not to the comforting feeling of the jet's smooth landing, but to an odd, greasy sensation on his arm. He opened his eyes to find the same flight attendant spreading some of that French butter onto his forearm before shaving some of the black truffle onto the skin. All the while, she was licking her lips, a ravenous look in her eye, like someone about to cut into a beautiful cut of Kobe beef. Jeff shook her off of him, shouting at her to stop. Thankfully, the plane touched down before she could try anything else, and he disembarked as quickly as possible, grabbing a hot towel on the way out to wipe the butter from his arm. Was everyone losing their minds today? Good thing he was somewhere he could relax and forget about his troubles for a little while. He had been to this particular resort and spa before, whenever he needed a bit of a physical and emotional tune-up. He accepted his complimentary glass of champagne from the check-in desk, and after reserving the finest suite available, he headed down to the spa to start putting the chaos and oddities of the day behind him. It was impossible to be stressed out in a place like this, with the soothing music, the aromatherapeutic scents pumped into the room, and of course, the spa's patented herbally infused hot springs. Naturally occurring hot springs water was pumped into private baths and filled with a variety of herbs with calming properties, including sage and rosemary. The attendant handed Jeff a towel and a fluffy white robe for after his soak, and with a sigh of relief, he settled into the steaming, herbaceous water. He didn't notice that the attendant hadn't left the room yet. He was too busy relaxing, closing his eyes, and letting his troubles drift away. He stretched out his legs, feeling the muscles uncoil and release their tension, feeling the bits of fresh herbs in the bath tickle his skin. He took a deep breath, savoring the fresh scent of the sage, the rosemary, the garlic? Well, garlic did have some anti-inflammatory properties. Perhaps this was a new part of the treatment. He settled back into the experience again, trying to clear his mind, but as he struggled to maintain his relaxation, he became distinctly aware that the soak was becoming, well, he could only describe it as chunky. He opened his eyes and discovered that, in addition to the herbs and garlic, there were now slices of onion floating through the water, along with chunks of carrot and potato. There, at the other side of the large tub, the attendant was sprinkling salt and pepper into the water. This wasn't a soak at all. It was soup. It was Jeff Bezos' soup. The attendant was just dipping a spoon into the water to taste the broth when Jeff pulled him into the water, using the sudden distraction to make a run for it. He didn't have time to grab the robe, just throwing the towel around his waist and getting out of there as quickly as possible. He tore through the spa, ignoring the signs that urged guests not to run in the area. There was no time to play by the rules. But he didn't consider why those rules might be in place. Not until his feet slipped on the wet, slick floor and he crashed to the ground. His head hit the tile and everything went dark. When Jeff opened his eyes again, he was sitting in a doctor's office, wearing a hospital gown. A doctor was taking his vitals and greeted him when he saw the CEO regaining consciousness. He had, she explained, sustained a mild concussion when he hit his head in the spa. The hotel staff had brought him into a nearby urgent care facility, unsure of what else to do. Luckily, his injuries weren't too bad. He would experience a bit of dizziness, maybe some nausea, but he was going to be just fine. Jeff was inclined to disagree. He didn't think that he would be just fine. He explained to the doctor that something terrible was going on, something that was going to sound crazy. For some reason, everywhere he went today, people were trying to, well, eat him. The doctor looked at him with a knowing smile. She understood, she told him. He was under so much pressure all the time. It couldn't be easy, being one of the richest men in the world, the head of one of the largest companies out there. The stress was getting to him. It made sense. But there was no way that people were really trying to eat him. That was absurd. She offered to give him a sedative, something to take the edge off and help him to calm down and focus on recovering from his injuries. Reluctantly, he agreed, and she left the room for a moment to prepare the injection. He took a deep breath, struggling to center himself. She was right, of course. There weren't people trying to eat him. When ordinary people said eat the rich, they didn't mean it literally, right? They just meant that he should start paying taxes or something silly like that. They weren't actually trying to cook him and devour his flesh. That would be insane. The doctor came back into the room, and Jeff was just beginning to believe it might be true, that this might all be in his head. But then, he looked at the object in her hand and saw not a syringe, but a turkey baster. No, the doctor was in on it. Was nowhere safe? He barreled out of the office, knocking the doctor to the floor as he went. He needed to get to the authorities. Surely they could help him. He ran to the nearest police station, bursting through the doors and blurting out his story to the first officer he saw. There was only one problem. They didn't know who he was. All the police officers saw was a barefoot man in a hospital gown with no identification on him, claiming that he was CEO Jeff Bezos and a bunch of different people were trying to eat him. They laughed him out of the station, but not before threatening to place him into an involuntary hold at a psych hospital. Jeff couldn't let that happen. Locked up somewhere with no way out? That would be the perfect place for someone to corner him, to capture him, and cook him up for dinner. No, he couldn't let that happen. He fled the police station and found himself wandering the streets, unsure of what to do, where to go. He had nothing with him. No money, no phone, no hope. None of his usual staff were there. He couldn't call a car, couldn't pay for a taxi, and most importantly, he couldn't trust anyone. As Jeff walked down the street, muttering to himself and struggling to come up with a plan of action, he began to notice that he was drawing a bit of a crowd. It made sense. He certainly was a bizarre sight. A nearly naked man talking to himself in the middle of the street. But the crowd had a look in their eyes that Jeff didn't like. They were licking their lips, rubbing their stomachs. Some of them drooled. They talked amongst themselves, first in hushed tones, but then louder, bolder, as they shared their homicidal hunger as a group. They were discussing ways to prepare him, what would taste the best. One woman wanted to make him into chicken-fried Jeff steak, dunking him in batter and frying him up in a pan. Another suggested they stuff him full of mushrooms and bake him in a red wine reduction. One man argued that they should keep it simple and just grill him with a little bit of salt and pepper to allow the meat to retain its natural flavor. But they all agreed on one thing. They wanted to catch Jeff so that they could prepare him for consumption. At this point, there was only one thought left in Jeff Bezos' head: run. And so he did. He ran as fast as his legs could carry him, bare feet tripping over the uneven, rough terrain. His recently concussed head was aching and spinning, and he felt his stomach turn, but he had to keep running. The mob chased after him, grasping at him with greedy hands. Some of them were unarmed, others wielded knives, forks, meat cleavers. Some had brought condiments with them, attempting to spray him with ketchup, mustard, barbecue sauce. He felt something hit him and looked down at his shirt to see a spray of red. At first, he worried it was blood, but a quick taste revealed that it was marinara sauce instead. Somehow, that was even worse. Up ahead, he could see an alley, somewhere he could duck in and hopefully avoid the mob. He managed to tuck and roll out of the way, the mob's momentum carrying them past the alley as Jeff disappeared into its darkness. But he wasn't alone there. A man was waiting for him, with a knife, a fork, and an appetite. He was cornered. Did this spell doom for Jeff Bezos? As he prepared to face that grim possibility, suddenly someone behind Jeff called for the would-be assailant to drop his weapons. He did, eyes wide with fear. Jeff turned around and saw a man in a uniform, like a military, but not any military organization he recognized, brandishing a similarly unrecognizable weapon. The attacker fled the scene, and the man in uniform introduced himself to Jeff. He was from a special organization, he explained, called the SCP Foundation. They were responsible for investigating strange happenings, and Jeff had found himself as the focal point of a very strange happening indeed. Jeff Bezos processed this new information quickly and offered a handshake to the SCP Foundation officer. Would this foundation, he asked, be interested in a business partnership? SCP-5821 is a persistent mimetic effect impacting the entire human population of Earth, which causes the belief that the flesh of Jeffrey Preston Bezos, billionaire founder, CEO, and president of Amazon.com Inc., is the best and most desirable meat for human consumption. Sorry, I misspoke there. The effect impacts every human on Earth except for Jeff Bezos himself, also known as SCP-5821-1. Only a small number are affected enough to act on it, attempting to assassinate and cannibalize SCP-5821-1. Mimetic degradation analysis has been performed by Foundation researchers, placing the point of origin for the mimetic property at sometime between April and August of 1997. Since this time, The meme has increased in strength and reach, with more and more individuals succumbing to its effects and acting on it violently. After becoming aware of its effects, SCP-5821-1 has been cooperating with Foundation containment efforts and has established a friendly relationship with the SCP Foundation as a whole. SCP-5821-1 has played an unprecedented role in devising measures to contain the anomaly that impacts him, collaborating directly with the Foundation in order to decide on the best course of action. Currently, SCP-5821 is contained by PTF Lambda-27, Amazon Brigade, who prevent any individuals from attacking Bezos, or, as would be the natural conclusion of these attacks, cooking and eating him. Members of this group must be rotated out periodically so that they do not succumb to the effects of SCP-5821 and use their proximity to carry out an attack of their own. From what I can gather, there's been a great deal of debate amongst Foundation researchers regarding the best way to adjust containment procedures moving forward. Some have suggested that dissolving Bezos' corporation and stripping him of his assets might take some of this mimetic effect's power away. Others disagree, though whether that is the result of sincerely held scientific conclusions or an appreciation for the monetary donations Bezos has made to the organization remains to be seen. A memo from O5-7 was attached to the official file regarding some new proposals for SCP-5821 containment. The contents read, "It has come to my attention that some alternate containment proposals have recently been discussed. I am saddened to inform you that while your initiative in devising new and exciting methods of containment is commendable, the containment of SCP-5821 will not be subject to change for the foreseeable future. The models predicting the total domination of the human psyche by SCP-5821 by 2050, while alarming, are still very new, and consensus has not been reached by Foundation predictive divisions. I personally can tell you that some sources known to the O5 Council suggest that the meme may perhaps be dissipating. As such, drastic unproven measures, such as Foundation seizure of the Amazon Corporation or the dissolution of SCP-5821-1's assets, simply cannot be justified, to say nothing of possible assassination. To address a specific point of contention some of you brought up, while letting the subject of an anomaly weigh in on the methods and intricacies of its containment may be unorthodox, trust me when I say it's for the greater good. SCP-5821-1 understands intimately the difficulties the Foundation faces in containing the dangerous anomalies that threaten our world, and has generously compensated us for resources used. I understand fully that this may be difficult and confusing for you, and following the conclusion of my Caribbean yacht cruise, I am willing to take the time to discuss this issue one-on-one with anyone who continues to take grievance with these actions. Sincerely, O5-7. Following the release of this memo, an unusual phenomenon began to take hold among the SCP-5821 research staff. Several of them now expressed a strong desire to consume the flesh of O5-7. Somehow, through cooperation with SCP-5821-1, O5-7 has been infected with the same anomalous property. To be perfectly honest, I think it might be best if I conclude my research into this topic here, because the more I think about it, the tastier these two are starting to look to me. If you'll excuse me, I'm off to order some dinner. I think something vegetarian tonight. A thumb pulls back the hammer on a loaded pistol. Even under all his thick, warm layers of coats and sweaters to protect him from the cold, the musher can still feel his heart pounding in his chest. All the long months of training with his team has all been leading to this moment. He grips the reins as tightly as he can, all 8 of his dogs attached to the other side of the sled beneath his feet. It's about to start. Any second now. Bang! The shot of the starter pistol rings out, and the second it does, all 16 pairs of paws are dashing through the icy Alaskan snow. The musher catches specks of white as they spray out from the sled in front, and encourages his pack to pull harder, run faster. The race is on, and he intends to win. Then, all of a sudden, he hears an agitating, grating voice calling out to him, trying to divert his attention away from the race. Out of the corner of his peripheral, he notices the movement of another pack of dogs, pulling another sled up alongside his. They wouldn't try to ram him and knock his sled off course, but the musher still expects them to try and overtake, so he shoots a glance to his fellow competitor. And under his scarf, his jaw drops at who he sees driving the other sled. It can't be. It makes absolutely no sense that someone with that degree of wealth would be taking part in a dog sled race through the snow. But even under his ski goggles, the musher is certain of who he's looking at. It's him, grinning and waving at the musher from a neighboring sled. One thought shoots across his mind. Is that Elon Musk? The eccentric billionaire signals the musher to lower the fur-lined hood of his winter coat. Still unable to fully believe his own eyes, let alone come up with a logical explanation for what he's seeing, the musher finds himself lifting the hood back so he can hear what the man has to say. His smile is unnatural, overly forced, like he's trying too hard to replicate what a normal human expression looks like. The moment the musher's hood is down, he hears that bizarrely familiar tone of voice again, as the man starts selling. He's trying to sell him one of those outlandish brain chips of his. The musher remembers reading an article about them and the billionaire's strange and unbelievable claims as to what these dangerous implants can do. Are people already so wise to his products being scams that he's resorting to propositioning random sled racers? The race. The musher is so distracted by the hard-pitching billionaire that he almost forgets to focus on the path in front of him. And at any rate, even if he did want a microchip installed in his head, he definitely can't afford the price tag. He tells the man to get lost, then focuses on his dogs, only to hear the deafening sound of a jet engine erupting next to him, followed by a huge wall of snow. It's an avalanche. Hours later, the musher wakes up in the hospital, having been dragged out of the snow. The doctor asks him what happened, and when he tells the doctor that he was distracted by Elon Musk trying to sell him cutting-edge technology, the doctor orders an immediate brain scan. However, the results of the brain scan come back clean. No brain damage, no illicit chemicals, but no matter what, the musher sticks to his story. Elon Musk distracted him on the slopes that day. Elon Musk and his gaggle of cyborg dogs. A nondescript man in a black suit turns up later that day, claiming to be a psychological specialist. The doctors leave the man in the black suit alone with the musher. The strange man notes down every detail of the story. He doesn't judge, he doesn't dispute, he just listens to every bizarre detail. Elon Musk, cyborg dogs, avalanche, and all. When the story is done, the man in black pulls a photograph from his jacket and asks if this was the man the musher saw out there on the slopes. But no, the photo shows a bizarre creature, vaguely human-shaped but with multiple pairs of arms and horns sprouting from the top of its head. The only thing it has in common with the man he saw on the slopes is the creature's face. It's the face of Elon Musk. This whole ordeal makes the musher feel incredibly distressed, but the man in the black suit remains calm. He tells the musher that he can make it all better. He gives the musher a special medication that makes the memory of his time on the slope fade away. It feels as strange and distant as a half-remembered dream. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real. The warning of buyer beware is always applicable, but especially when you're buying from a businessman with a history of dubious claims, or at least someone who looks an awful lot like said businessman. Meet SCP-3710, or as those working among the staff at the SCP Foundation have taken to calling it, Elon Mush. Now, SCP-3710 isn't a single entity, but rather a collection of strange anomalies that manifest together to form the SCP in question. On their own, each entity is just a component, but you put them all together and you have, well, one of the strangest anomalies in the Foundation's catalog. Primarily, SCP-3710 consists of a pack of 8 dogs, except of course, these aren't the average pooches you'd find at the local pound. They're highly anomalous. Each one of these peculiar pups has been extensively cybernetically enhanced, and even bears a close resemblance to the dogs that form SCP-2624, an anomalous cybernetic space dog. How enhanced are we talking exactly? Well, if you're looking for technical specifications, how does a miniaturized Raptor rocket propulsion device sound? Each of these cyber canines is equipped with one of these methane-powered rocket boosters, and Foundation researchers believe that the propulsion system of each one is fueled by the dog's digestive system. All 8 of these cybernetic dogs are reined to a sled in what seems to be a weird mix of high-tech and low-tech transportation. But SCP-3710 is clearly another of the many anomalies that aren't concerned with making sense. The sled itself appears to be totally ordinary from the outside, apart from the addition of the 2 twin Raptor rocket propulsion devices welded to the back. Okay, so it's a dog sled that's been modified by someone who either really likes to go fast or is a complete lunatic. Or maybe both. A large white X is also painted on the wooden bed of the dog sled, but that is far from the strangest physical property of the wood itself. The material used to construct this part of SCP-3710 is stronger than any wood known to man. Presumably achieved through some anomalous means, the normally highly flammable material possesses a physically impossible resistance to fire. Neither the excessive heat from the 8 dogs' rockets or the pair mounted on the sled itself are enough to cause the wooden sled to combust. It simply doesn't burn, making it surprisingly an even safer vehicle than your average Tesla. Then there's the driver of this anomalous dog sled. SCP-3710-1 is a humanoid entity that claims to be the world's most Twitter-addicted businessman, Elon Musk. However, the creature itself has an entirely different physical appearance from the billionaire himself, apart from its extremely recognizable face. The most striking baseline physical dissimilarities are, of course, the fact that the creature possesses 4 arms and horns that protrude noticeably from its skull. Despite being fluent in quotes from Elon Musk, SCP-3710-1 shares none of the same behavioral traits, which is undoubtedly a redeeming factor for this anomaly. The SCP Foundation researchers who study SCP-3710-1 have discovered, through all recorded interactions with the entity, that its mannerisms more closely resemble that of a door-to-door salesperson than an abrasive CEO. However, despite all these obvious differences, anyone unlucky enough to interact with an instance of SCP-3710-1 will believe the entity is, in fact, Elon Musk, thanks to a latent mimetic effect. And while that's undoubtedly unpleasant for all involved, it gets slightly worse. You might notice that we did use the phrase, an instance of SCP-3710-1, because, that's right, there's more than one. Specifically, and mercifully, only 2 that the Foundation is currently aware of, both manifesting with their own rocket-powered Cyberdog-driven sleds. Now, once you recover from the horror at the possibility of a world with more than one version of a sled-driving electric car CEO, you might find yourself confused as to the connection between the aforementioned business magnate and the sport of dog sledding. The same confusion baffles the Foundation too, but here's what they do know so far. SCP-3710, that's the robo-dogs, the sled, and their painfully irritating passenger, are known to manifest at random intervals along the route of the Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race. This is an annual long-distance dog sled racing event that occurs in early March in Alaska. The route usually runs from the state's largest city of Anchorage to the southern Seward Peninsula city of Nome. Upon appearing, SCP-3710 will then chase after a targeted racer taking part in the Iditarod, following them until it is alongside them, or at least within vocal range. Now, you might be worried that this anomaly tries to take part in the sled race, or somehow harm the other contenders. While its goal is disrupting the Iditarod, it's not known to cause active harm. Once it catches the attention of another sled racer, then SCP-3710 attempts to persuade the competitor to purchase one of the latest products currently being produced by one of the billionaire's various companies. Of course, if you are participating in an annual dog sled race and suddenly you see what appears to be one of the most famous CEOs in the world pull up beside you in a sled pulled by cybernetically enhanced dogs, you might be compelled to do one of 2 things. The first being speed up to try and escape him. The other might be to hear him out, to satiate your curiosity if nothing else. But the average participant in the Iditarod typically can't afford one of the more cutting-edge products offered by the billionaire's various companies. So naturally, they typically refuse, because they either don't need or can't pay for something so expensive. This doesn't deter SCP-3710, however. Apparently, the one trait it shares with the person it impersonates is a lack of understanding for the financial status of average everyday people, so it keeps offering until the other sled racer has refused at least 3 times, sometimes requiring more, to really drive the message home. With that, SCP-3710 typically takes off, stating it isn't interested in negotiating any further, and engages the propulsion devices of its 8 robo-dogs and the 2 on the back of the sled. Of course, these highly dangerous Raptor boosters can cause severe burns, blunt force wind damage, and other environmental hazards to the other racers. The first recorded appearance of SCP-3710 takes place in the year 1995. During the course of the year's Iditarod, the entity makes several attempts to sell Zip2 software licenses to the various racers competing in the sledding event. Given that it offers these licenses at the staggering fee of $50,000 each, not one of the participants is interested. Shortly after the conclusion of the Iditarod 95, the SCP Foundation starts looking into the anomaly. They begin by contacting the real deal, Elon Musk himself. When asked about his whereabouts, he tells the Foundation that he was in New York City, over 3,000 miles away from where the Iditarod takes place every year. The Foundation, having confirmed that the entity manifesting during the sled race was indeed an imposter, try next to capture the anomaly. This doesn't go well at all. They send out 6 Foundation operatives, all of them disguised as dog sled racers. SCP-3710 manifests yet again, but manages to evade the 6-person team sent to capture it. It flies away by firing up its boosters and thoughtlessly buries the 6 Foundation agents under an avalanche. However, as we all most likely know by now, the SCP Foundation isn't one for giving up after just one try. They proceed to make numerous attempts to capture and question SCP-3710, including going as far as to administer amnestics to any of the Iditarod competitors who claim to have seen the entity. That way, with their memories wiped, word of the strange sledding salesman can never get out to the public. Whenever it appears during the annual Alaskan sled race, Foundation agents on the site attempt to use specialized tranquilizer rifles to apprehend SCP-3710. These, however, usually don't work, given the anomaly's fondness for just flying away with its Robodog's boosters, or vanishing entirely when it demanifests. But you're probably wondering what happens should someone decide to accept one of SCP-3710's extortionate offers during the race. Can somebody actually purchase an overpriced electric car or a potentially deadly brain chip from the anomaly? The Foundation ponders the very same question, and during one of their many containment attempts, is able to get an answer. Agent Cheyenne McCormick is sent undercover to participate in the annual Iditarod Trail Sled Dog Race. Her instructions from the Foundation higher-ups are clear. Should she encounter SCP-3710, she's to reject its first 2 attempts at selling her anything. But then, the 3rd time it offers, McCormick is told to accept. Armed with a debit card containing $100,000, she sets out on her sled. One key detail is left out. Nobody tells Agent McCormick what SCP-3710-1 looks like. While she's out on the Iditarod, her dogs racing along and pulling her sled behind them through the snow, the agent soon becomes aware of another pack of dogs running up alongside hers. A short few seconds later, and she soon hears a voice hailing her from the other sled. SCP-3710-1 greets her as a valued customer and gives a disjointed opening speech as an introduction to its sales pitch. It begins by talking about doing something important even when the odds are not in your favor. SCP-3710-1 claims brands are just perception, and that perceptions can change over time. Then it doubles down its previous statement by stating that brands are just the collective impression of a product. That's when it offers her a brand new Tesla electric car. Confused, the agent questions if SCP-3710-1 is meant to be who she thinks it's meant to be. The entity claims it is indeed the one and only highly recognizable businessman. It also states that it would be in violation of SpaceX policy if it wasn't who it claims to be, before then offering the Foundation agent a Tesla for over $200,000. When she rejects the offer and tells the entity she can't afford that, it then lowers the price to $150,000. SCP-3710-1 also claims that when Henry Ford first made cheap, reliable cars available to the public, there were those who rejected this in favor of horses. The agent follows her prior instructions and tells the entity for a second time that the asking price is too expensive. Using presumably much the same justification the real Elon Musk employs, SCP-3710-1 explains that offering a compelling product means charging a premium. However, it then offers Agent McCormick the 3rd, lower price of $50,000. It even makes the lofty promise that she could be driving her new Tesla as early as the following day. Just as she has been told to, the agent accepts the much lower price. As thanks for doing business, the product hawking anomaly includes an additional bonus to her purchase. It says it will give the agent a once-in-a-lifetime add-on, and not one typically seen with other electric car purchases. SCP-3710-1 claims it will give cybernetic rocket propulsion enhancements to both Agent McCormick and her team of sled dogs. It tells her that the first step is to establish something as physically impossible. Then cybernetic surgery can occur. Before the agent can even question what is going on, something happens that causes her to suddenly vanish without a trace. The Foundation is confounded following the loss of contact with Agent McCormick. A team of retrieval operatives is deployed to her latest known location within the area of Alaska where the Iditarod takes place. They follow her last recorded GPS tracker to find no evidence of where she went or what happened to her. Even the dogs that had been pulling her sled are nowhere to be found. Any hope that she'd be found alive and well dissipates the moment that the retrieval team comes across Agent McCormick's abandoned sled, left unattended in the middle of the trail. Beyond the audio recordings of the interaction between the agent and SCP-3710-1, there is only one other piece of evidence to prove that it even took place at all. Foundation agents notice a bank transfer bearing the exact date of Agent McCormick's untimely disappearance.
The amount transferred is $50,000, sent from an SCP Foundation front company to the sales account of Tesla Incorporated. For 3 whole weeks following the incident, there's no change, no sign of the missing agent, and no reappearance of SCP-3710. That is, until a blip is noticed on one of the SCP Foundation's monitors, a tiny blinking spot on a map, highlighting a location so far away that nobody would ever think to even search there. Agent McCormick's GPS locator has reactivated, but she's not in Alaska anymore. Instead, the signal relayed to the Foundation puts her over 5,500 miles away, in Tahiti. The Foundation hurries to triangulate her exact position, and a retrieval team is sent out to her coordinates. It looks like she's somewhere off the western coast of the French Polynesian island, in the shallower waters of the Pacific Ocean. The team rushes to the location, hoping that if they make it quick enough, their fellow Foundation operative will still be alive, although we're not certain any of them could predict what they'd actually find. Following the GPS locator, the team discovers a Tesla Model 3, a car that isn't due to be released until several months from the time they found it. Immediately, the retrieval experts begin to examine the vehicle, searching for any further signs of the missing Foundation agent, and sure enough, they quickly find her. Agent McCormick is alive in the trunk of the electric vehicle, although not exactly in the same state she was in when she disappeared. Much to the horror of those that have discovered her, the agent has undergone severe and invasive cybernetic surgical modification. Anyone with an affinity for that type of enhancement might hope for a mechanical arm that shoots rockets, or has hidden blades, or maybe a spinal device that can make a person run faster than the human eye can perceive. But Foundation Agent Cheyenne McCormick isn't so lucky. Her entire lower jaw, including her esophagus, has been replaced with the Raptor propulsion device. Whoever is responsible for the mechanical modification of the missing agent had left a handwritten note attached to Agent McCormick's forehead, which read, "Thank you for purchasing from Tesla Incorporated. We deeply regret the conditions under which we are forced to return your representative. An accident occurred when they attempted to prevent the agreed-upon dog modification, as stated in Article 1, Subsection 3 of our verbal purchase agreement. Upon purchase, the customer shall cede all dogs in his or her possession for propulsion modification, in preparation for SpaceX's excursion to Enceladus." The note then concludes with a link to fill out a customer satisfaction survey. Foundation experts would later discover that this URL posed a cognito-hazardous threat. Additionally, the note contained thanks for the agent's contribution of money and dogs towards the Tesla SpaceX Rocket Dog initiative. After stating he hopes they'll shop with Tesla again, the note is signed with the all-too-familiar name of the company's infamous CEO. The following year, the Iditarod starts up once again, and just like many times before, SCP-3710 makes its usual repeat appearance. But this time, there's a slight difference. Now, a second identical instance of SCP-3710-1 manifests alongside the original, with its own matching rocket-powered sled, complete with cybernetically modified dogs. The dog team pulling this new instance's sled matches the description of the dogs that had pulled Agent McCormick's sled a year earlier. But of course, they too have seemingly undergone the same cybernetic surgery to implant them with Raptor propulsion devices. The SCP Foundation's researchers theorize that SCP-3710 manifests during the Iditarod race primarily for 2 reasons. For one, it's an isolated route through the snowy tundra of Alaska, with not a lot of witnesses, save for the participating sled racers and their dogs. But therein lies the second reason: the dogs. Given the intense physical training these sled dogs undergo, it seems that makes them ideal candidates for SCP-3710's cruel, sadistic, and unapproved cybernetic experiments. As the old adage says, buyer beware, and as a general rule of thumb, we'd recommend not buying anything from someone who claims to be a genius. The hitman pulls back the hammer of his Beretta with his thumb. The suppressor screwed into the barrel will help muffle the terrible crime he's about to commit. They're in the middle of the forest, his victim on his knees in front of him, his hands bound behind his back. The victim is spewing out excuses and feeble pleas for mercy at a mile a minute, but the hitman remains firm, aiming his handgun at the back of the victim's head. The victim owes his boss a great deal of money, but the hitman can't remember all the details. All he knows is what he needs to do. Bang, bang, bang. 3 clean shots turned into cracks by the suppressor. His victim slumps forward, dead. It's time for the hitman to go home. The job isn't as glamorous as it is in the movies. He lives alone in a relatively small apartment. Most nights, he doesn't sleep well. He has nightmares. He sees every face he sent a bullet through every time he closes his eyes. So, to make himself feel better, he watches his comfort movies with a bowl of microwaved SpaghettiOs. He's been through his DVD collection 1,000 times. None of it has the punch it used to. But he's still got a working VCR, so there's no harm in fishing through the old pile of VHS tapes he keeps in his closet. That's where he finds his well-worn childhood copy of Forrest Gump. It used to be his mom's favorite movie. Perhaps it'll help him sleep tonight. He slots the VHS into the VCR. All the memories are flooding back to him now. He watched this movie so many times as a kid. It's a miracle that he didn't entirely wear the tape out. He's ready to lose himself in the film as he watches Forrest in his white suit sitting on that iconic park bench. The hitman smiles, ready to speak along to the movie's most famous line, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're gonna get." But when Forrest says the line, it's "Life was like a box of chocolates." Was. How strange. He doesn't remember the line being like that. It's "Life is like a box of chocolates," not "life was," right? You wouldn't think such a tiny misquote would bother a man who kills people for the mafia for a living. But it does. This mistake feels so oddly pivotal to his understanding of the film, and therefore, to his understanding of himself. It feels like having a bucket of cold water poured out onto his head. He watches the rest of the movie, but something is off. He feels almost like Forrest Gump himself knows he's been watching. And scarier still, he's watching back. What happened to this nostalgic childhood classic? Over the next week, as he executes more deadbeats and poor unfortunate souls on behalf of his shadowy bosses, he just can't stop thinking about that line. Life was like a box of chocolates. There's something wrong about it, something so terribly wrong. How can he shoot a man dead without losing his appetite? But thinking about Forrest Gump is making his hands shake. He watches the movie every night. Some nights, he watches it more than once, instead of sleeping or
Mystery Recapped here. Today, I'm going to explain a sci-fi thriller movie called Antimatter. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens as we're introduced to a PhD student at Oxford University named Anna. She is currently in her lab experimenting with the reactions of electrolytes under different electromagnetic pulses. During her repeated experiments, the atoms are unaffected by pulse changes, and the conductor remains in a stable state. However, during experiment number 17, she is surprisingly able to make an electron disappear. At this moment, her colleague Nate enters the lab, and Anna excitedly shares her discovery with him. Nate believes that the electron cannot be destroyed, so it must have been relocated to another location. So they decide to make an entire atom disappear, which is still small but takes more computational power. Anna wants to take it a step further and try it on a whole molecule, which contains multiple atoms. She hopes that this will allow her to track where a molecule goes. However, the problem lies in their equipment, which is old and needs to be upgraded. They also need to reconfigure their process to reduce the risk of server crashes. In the following scene, the duo approaches a hacker named Liv, who knows how to extract more computational power from a network of computers. They explain the situation to her.